Howdy YouTube, we are back today with some Outriders tips and tricks. Now I have a lot of tips and tricks to share with you all, so I decided to split it into two separate videos. One for the lower level and newer players to the game, which is this video, and a second one filled with more advanced tips and tricks for players who are either struggling with the endgame content or just want to up their game and get even better. So without further ado, let's jump straight into the tips and tricks for newer or lower level players, and all you OP gamers may find something out you never knew before. These tips and tricks are in no particular order, and with that out of the way, let's go straight into the very first tip. The very first tip that I want to share with you is that you can dismantle your gear anywhere in the world of Enoch and get all the same resources that you would have gotten if you had dismantled your gear through the crafting screen with Dr. Zahidi. This means you should never really run out of space to grab more loot unless you're carrying multiple sets of gears for multiple builds for the one character. One thing to note is that when you do dismantle your gear away from Dr. Zahidi, you will not always see all the loot and mods gained appear on screen like you would do within Zahidi's crafting interface. If you want to see what you will gain from dismantling your gear, you can hover your cursor over the dismantle button located in the bottom right section of your inventory screen, and this will show all the mats, shards and mods that you will receive from breaking down the marked items. Now moving on to the second tip you should all know about is the fact you can now change which shoulder the camera is behind. This will also change the stance of your character when aiming and make them use their other shoulder, as well as allowing you to see and aim around corners that you could not do in the beta or in the original launch week. This is an amazing quality of life update, as there have been many times in the beta when I wanted to peek out of cover to shoot an enemy but not expose my entire character's body to the enemy, and now we can do that. This was a feature that I loved in the Division back when I used to play that game, and I am so happy they now have it in Outriders. So next on the list will be the increased healing attribute or trait that can roll on weapons and armors in the game. The definition the game gives for healing received is increases the amount of health restored through direct healing. This does not affect health regained through leech and regeneration. The direct healing is where you see it say it heals a certain amount of health when a trigger is met. For example, the Devastator has a class ability node that will heal them for X amount when they pick up ammo. There is also a tier 2 mod called Hidden Medic that does this same effect. These are what the healing received trait increases. Again, not leech and not your regeneration. So moving on, the next tip on this list is for those people who are struggling to get through the content like the story campaign. You can turn your world tier down at any time to make things easier for yourself. Yes, this may mean you get lower level loot, but it also means you can progress with the game and keep having fun, which is like the main reason games exist. My recommendation for running through the story as fast as possible but still getting loot that you can use to progress forward is to set your world tier to 3 and then make sure that the feature that automatically increases your world tier when you gain a new one, you make sure that that feature is turned off. This feature can be found within the screen that you select your world tier as well. This way, all the enemies will be the same level as you and all the loot will also be your level, rarely making you underpowered or feeling weak towards the enemies and having all the fun being sapped out of the game. The game's scaling mechanic does not seem like it's scaling linear, and having your will tier level up just before you get into the next engagement can make all your enemies feel a hell of a lot stronger than the previous group you just fought, due to your equipment's level not being high enough compared to your opponent's new level, thanks to the will tier going up a level. Now, I'm going to warn you about a mistake I kept making for a while on my first character, and that is not using the modding system to my advantage. So one of the biggest tips I can give people is make sure you are modding your gear. I am a bit of a min-maxer, and so I thought that when I got to the end game, I would need thousands upon thousands of leather and iron to mod my gear. This is not the case. With that being said, you should mod your gear often and not worry about spending your leather, iron and titanium. Trust me, you will have an abundance of them by the time you get to endgame. There are a lot of mods in the game being split between 3 tiers for both weapons and armor, and taking advantage of these mods can help make your character feel a lot stronger and become needed by the endgame content. So I advise you to get used to them sooner rather than later. Something I want to note here for the brand new players is that the crafting system is not unlocked by default, and you must wait until you have met Dr. Zahidi in the storyline before it becomes unlocked. Now, we all know this game is all about being a badass altered with super magical space powers, but the problem with the early stages and the early levels of your character is that you just don't have enough anomaly power to make the skills really good. In the lower levels, your guns and firepower bonuses are most likely going to be much stronger than your abilities. So trying to build your character around its abilities from the offset can come with some really annoying challenges till you start reaching the max level gear, or get extremely lucky with getting perfect roll gear as you're going through your leveling process, which again, due to RNG, is really annoying. With all this being said, I would recommend building your character around its guns and use your abilities to support yourself and your allies if you play with other players. Your base anomaly power bonus is linked to your average item level of equipped gear. This is why in the lower levels you just don't have enough power. Any kind of gun build for any of the classes should be more than effective up until around will tier 10, and at that point you may need to start looking into using the class to its strengths. So if it is a gun build and the class has things to work for a gun build, they can still progress higher than tier 10. But if your class is generally working around anomaly powers like a pyromancer, gun builds just don't have enough power compared to an anomaly build when you hit those higher will tiers. For the next tip and trick on this video, there is a simple and guaranteed way to farm legendaries at your level without getting to the endgame content known as the expeditions. This is by completing the wanted and hunt quest lines that you can pick up from the bar in Trenchtown, like the 4th place you visit in the story. Completing either of these quest lines in their entirety and then turning all of them in to the correct person will award you with a piece of legendary gear and allow you to reset the entire quest line and grind it all out again. You can quickly and easily check your progress by opening up your quest map and hovering your cursor over the respected category in the bottom bottom left of your screen, and it will show you which ones you have to complete and where to find them. You can rerun these quests, as I have said, as many times as you want, allowing you to easily farm legendaries for your characters. This is probably the best way to solo farm legendaries for any leveled character. Please note that the update they did to these quest lines did not affect the legendaries coming from completing the whole quest line, just the drop rate of legendaries from certain bosses you kill within this quest line. And then one more tip I would like to give is you only need your world tier on the highest to get the legendary as on your level on the very final hunt or wanted quest you do, meaning the first 9 that you run can be ran on world tier 1, meaning you can run through all of them within about 20 minutes and then just spend 10 minutes in your top world tier on the very final quest. Then you can go and turn all of them in and get your legendary at your level, because the game will register that you completed the final quest in the quest line at your highest world tier, so it will give your legendary to that reward. But moving on, next on the list of tips and tricks, I would like to talk about the auto loot system, a system that you want to become best friends with. This mechanic will pick up all the loot on the map that meets your auto loot setting parameter, regardless of how far away you are. So you can start in an area, open up a chest, and run all the way to the very end of the area and the quest, then press your auto loot, and as long as you haven't been forced into any kind of cinematics or any kind of loading screen, the auto loot will pick up those items and put them into your inventory. It will also pick up all leather, iron, and titanium as well. The only items it cannot pick up is ammunition, so make sure you're picking up your ammunition or using those restock boxes when you need them. The auto loot setting can be found in your normal game settings, and changing this setting changes what rarity of loot that will be auto picked up for you when you press your auto loot button. Bit of a tongue twister there. This also grabs all loot from the rarities above the one you selected, so my advice would be just to set this down to common straight away, and that way you will never leave any loot behind on the floor, and all your loot will always get collected when you press your auto loot button. This also means less time looking around the floor for your loot, less chances to be distracted by loot being dropped and rushing to try and get it and dying, and more time actually playing the game, shooting the enemies, using your abilities, and being the super badass altered we all want to be, and of course having that extra fun. These last 2 tips are more catered towards non-solo players. So the first one is about the crossplay system in the game. Yes, crossplay does work, and it is a lot more stable since they pushed out a patch that addressed some of the connectivity issues within the crossplay. Saying this, the crossplay can be laggy, and that can be really annoying when half the enemies lunge at you and you need almost perfect movement to avoid certain attacks. Shout out to Dark Souls bosses. I've never played Dark Souls, but watching bosses and people do the bosses in Dark Souls really reminds me of how you have to play this game with some of the enemies. Also, the lag can affect your health regen mechanic and actually make it proc a little late, which can end up getting you killed when you really should have not been killed. Again, same for skills life leech and your weapons life leech. Do you see that little lag icon in the top right corner of your screen, those 3 bars, yellow or red, telling you that of how bad your lag is? You're probably not gonna heal as soon as you deal your damage, like you would do if you were the host of that lobby. Crossplay is disabled by default to prevent people from matchmaking into a crossplay lobby and having a bad experience due to lag or other issues. You will need to turn this on yourself within your game settings to be able to play with other players from different platforms. And lastly, the final piece of advice I have for this video is that your matchmaking settings is set to closed by default. This is to prevent people matchmaking into lobbies where the leader is AFK or wanting to play solo or spending half an hour in the crafting screen trying to perfect their build. So you must opt in into having people be able to join you. This can be changed by bringing up the games menu where you can select your world tiers or quit the game. On PC that I play as, it's press escape to bring that menu. I believe it is start on both PlayStation and Xbox, but please do not quote me on that. I am not sure. And once you have brought that menu up, you can click on the privacy setting along the bottom bar of the screen to change it, or you can press the key that is bound to that action, which is also shown and displayed across the bottom of the screen. I also want to note here again that there is a scaling mechanic used when you have multiple players in a lobby, but I will be trying to cover that more in depth in my next video for tips and tricks for the endgame content and high level players, as in the lower levels the scaling isn't as steep as it is in the higher levels. So I hope you have found at least something in this video to be helpful, or something that you never knew before. I would also like to ask you to drop a like on the video to help me out with the YouTube algorithm, and if you want to see more of my content, then just hit that subscribe button, and also hit that bell if you want to get notifications on any new videos I upload. If you want to chat to me or other awesome gamers, then hit that Discord link in the video's description and get yourself in one of the best gaming community servers there are. With all that being said, it's time to end the video, so I hope you all keep safe, keep well, and I'll catch you later.